Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 172. As always, my name is Dr. David C. Noe. I am here in the vomitorium, the bunker, the basement, vomitorium central, or maybe north. I guess that remains to be seen.
I was thinking we might call it, like, this is our Parnassus.
Oh, yeah.
This is our omphalos, our center.
We finally climbed it.
Maybe,
The
right.
eagle flew overhead and dropped that belly button right here.
Right here.
So here we are.
Yes, I think this means that we can't move.
Right.
Right.
It could be.
Yeah.
So listeners, that voice you hear with its lilting tones is one Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle, and the T stands for topical.
Topical, yes. All right.
Because he's bringing us today's topic. And Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well today. Yeah. I'm starting to pine for some warmer weather. I just heard on the radio on the way over that that's not likely for a while. We're looking for kind of I think the groundhog saw his shadow.
Did he see his shadow?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
We got a couple more weeks of this.
Yeah.
At least before we break into that month that we have mercilessly mocked all these past years.
Yeah. Are you ready for some lousy Smarch weather?
I can't bring myself even to say it. It's long been my theory that once we get to March 1st, we're in the home stretch.
I know.
It's the 8th inning. We can endure.
We can do that, yes. But all that aside, how are you doing, Dave?
I'm glad you asked. I'm doing well. I have to say I'm even more pensive than usual.
Why so?
Honestly, I can't diagnose it, but I've been thinking about this, and there's no joke here. There's a man going around taking names.
Yeah?
And he's deciding who to free and who to blame.
Uh-huh.
If you get that reference.
I'm missing it.
This is Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, okay.
The man goes around.
Yeah, okay.
And so I've just been thinking about that, which makes one pensive.
Yes.
And I suppose if the listeners are interested, they can go look that up.
Have you been listening to some Johnny Cash?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, and that explains it.
Yes.
There's a whirlwind going around in the tree of thorns, words to that effect.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
some lovely poetry, but
good stuff. Yeah.
What do we got going today, Jeff?
Today we are talking about one of the great archaeological discoveries of all time.
Yes.
And this is the discovery of the royal tombs at modern-day Vergina, at the ancient Macedonian capital of, how do you pronounce this word?
Aigai?
Aigai, I guess.
Yes.
In modern Greek.
Aigai.
In modern Greek, it would be Igi.
Igi.
Something like that.
Yes.
There's no wonderful way to pronounce that word.
No, there isn't.
Right.
Has to do with goats,
Yes, it does. Yes.
Right.
But this incredible discovery of a couple of undisturbed royal tombs that happened in 1977. And we're going to talk about that. I finished a recent book on this, and which talks about the kind of the story of that discovery, but also the ongoing controversy of identifying who are actually in these tombs and what do these remains mean.
Right.
Yeah. So
incredible.
That's what's on tap.
Yes. Speaking of on tap,
yes,
this would be a good time to mention our giveaway, which has really started to gain some traction.
Excellent. Are we getting some?
We are. Yeah. I think you've seen a few of them.
Yeah.
Some of them come with very nice compliments, which
that's right. Yeah.
I guess I don't want to say it's to be expected, like we're doing a great job, but who would bother to listen and then reach for that coffee machine and do so, through all kinds of heartache and sorrow?
Right.
I'm gonna brute my way through this awful podcast just to get that coffee machine.
Exactly. I guess a more cynical way of looking at it is that they're trying to butter us up and maybe so we can kind of maybe tilt the scales a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that would be okay.
Right.
I tell each entrant, as with all the other entrants, I'm secretly rooting for you to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are we talking about? The Ratio 4.
That's right. Yep.
This fantastic coffee maker. I don't know if you took a glimpse at it on my counter upstairs on your way in.
I missed it. I came right down to the bunker.
Is yours prominently placed at home? No, it's in your office.
My 4 is at my office. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got the 8 in your home.
Yes.
You got the 6 in your vehicle.
That's right.
And the 4 in your office.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right. All bases covered.
That's right. So someone wants to get a chance, a crack at this fantastic Ratio coffee machine, the 4. What should they do, Jeff?
They should write to you.
Okay.
Dave@adnauseam.com. Don't forget that V. And they need to write the secret word,
which we're going to hold back, keep in abeyance until later in the episode, and then we'll drop it in. And if they send me this properly spelled code word, they will be enrolled for the drawing, which is going to take place on March 26th.
Okay, so we got about a month and a half left.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Sulu, you're about to take the helm,
Yeah.
I understand, and you're going to guide us through the treacherous field of asteroids of this particular episode.
Yes.
So why don't you get us started, please?
Sure. So I got the idea for this episode. Well, actually, it started earlier this fall when I debuted a brand new course on Greco-Roman archaeology at the institution where I teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do something on these magnificent finds at Vergina. And so I was just looking for a book, articles that could kind of give me an overview. And I stumbled upon this book.
Okay.
I think it came out last year.
Oh, wow.
And it's by...
accurate.
Yes. So it's by one David Grant, and it's called Unearthing the Family of Alexander the Great, the Remarkable Discovery of the Royal Tombs of Macedon.
Can I see the cover there?
Yes, right. So it's
I like that.
it's a nice picture of the front doors of the tomb that is usually identified as that of Philip II.
Yes, and on top is a little part of the Alexander mosaic from
Yes.
Pompeii or Herculaneum. I can't remember which.
I think it's from Pompeii.
It's from Pompeii,
Yep.
yeah, which is in the museum. It's not in situ.
Right, the Battle of Issus.
That's right. Incredible. I love the cover. Who's the publisher of that work?
The publisher, this is, it's Pen and Sword.
Oh, okay.
Right? So now, one of the issues with this book, not necessarily an issue that I have, this author, David Grant, he's a kind of a button pusher.
Okay.
And he's a popularizer.
Oh, well, one of those two I like very much.
Right. So he's one of the, he's not a classics academic.
Right.
And my guess is if a lot of the the stalwarts of academia were to read this book, they would sneer.
No, that could be.
Yeah.
Popularizing is good. Button pushing, I'm not a great fan of. If it's a reach,
yeah,
right, you're pushing a button to get a response. I mean, that's why you push a button, right? But,
yeah. Maybe button pushing isn't the right phrase. He is. He likes I think he's one of these guys that kind of just likes to invade and kind of break stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think he's one of the. I mean, I think those figures are necessary sometimes that you. In academia, it gets too.
It's highly
rigid.
Conservative.
It is.
People don't understand this because I think they generally don't understand just how conservative academia is.
Yeah.
Not in having conservative political principles, but
right.
resistance to change.
Yes.
Right? We've always done it that way.
Yeah, exactly. What I like about him is he's a really good storyteller.
Okay.
His summary of the time period between the end of the Peloponnesian War and to Philip II's murder is worth the price of the book alone.
Really? Trained as a journalist, maybe?
Yeah, he's kind of all over the place. His only other book is he wrote a book on Alexander the Great, in which he kind of challenges all of the accepted notions about him. I haven't read that book. I was reading some of the reviews on Amazon, and it's kind of people either love it or they say this guy's out of his mind.
Right. So you must have been, speaking of challenging norms, you must have been in a bit of a hurry when you texted me the title and the author.
Yeah.
Because when I saw the guy's name, it was not David Grant, but David Grabty. Grabty. Right. And when I saw it, I instantly thought, come on, that's made up. And then I searched high and low for the book, and this explains it.
You were searching under Grabty?
I was looking for Grabty.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
No idea. Right.
I have typos all the time, especially in texting, because, that's a more recent technology than we were raised with.
Right. What I like about him, he's clearly well connected. He has lots of friends. He's a guy that I think is very good at ingratiating himself to many people in many different levels of halls of academia and halls of power.
Right.
He seems to be very charming on the page.
Oh, nice.
And so he tells the story in this very engaging fashion. It reads very novelistic.
Okay.
Where it kind of falls apart, I think, is in the last quarter of the book.
Okay.
Where he starts to speculate.
All right.
And that's where
So we're going to keep that till later in the episode, right? The speculation.
Right. Yep.
So maybe Grabty could be one of those mononymous guys.
Mononymous, yeah. Well, like
there's eponymous, like a nickname. There's pseudonymous, like a false name.
Yeah.
There's anonymous, no name. This week I learned something. I'm so foolish, but apparently someone can be mononymous.
Okay, like Bono.
Like Bono,
Okay,
yes, or Cher, or Sting,
yes,
or Prince, or Enya.
Right.
Madonna. Can you think of any others?
Let's see here. Boy, those are the
leading ones,
hard hitters, right?
But I wonder, why is this limited? Why is this limited to entertainment and music?
Yeah.
Could you be mononymous in people? We're not saying monogamous. Could you be mononymous in the field of academia? Like so popular, you just go by one name.
That would be tough,
yes.
right?
I don't know anybody like that.
My goodness.
Instead, people go the other way. They try to add in a lot of initials.
Yeah.
To try to make the name sound better.
Well, I guess maybe the closest thing you'll hear, people that are referred to simply by their last name.
That's true.
Like Freud, Jung.
That's true.
Everyone knows what you're
talking about. Do you think
about.
I'm not sure that's mononymity, though.
Right, but the idea is that all I have to do is drop the last name.
Yeah.
And, you'll know who I'm talking about.
So you could just go by Winkle. Once you dominate the field, you're just Winkle.
Just Winkle, right. I would rather be mononymous. I would rather, like Sting, right? That's not his birth name.
No, it isn't.
That was something that was
Is it something like Leonard? I don't even know. But
it's Gordon.
Gordon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's close.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. So this was just something that you stumbled upon?
Yeah, and I was really surprised. And one other item of just kind of a throwaway observation on the passing scene is that it occurs to me that there is no superhero named Gale Force.
That's a missed opportunity.
Isn't that a missed opportunity?
Right.
First name Gale, last name Force.
Yeah.
That's perfect, isn't it?
I think the only time I've run across that, it was a woman that took that name, and she was a meteorologist.
Oh.
And that was kind of her wacky, like, on-screen.
Oh, so she wasn't known as Gale Force.
She was going to Gale Force.
Oh, well, then forget it. It's not original.
Well, it was very much like winking at the camera.
I'm a hack.
Right.
I thought I had something good here.
Right. There was a guy on a local radio station a while back that did the weather, and he was less humid.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right,
all right.
Right.
We can let it go.
Yeah.
Do we have an opening quote from Mr. Grant today?
Mr. Grabtee?
Mr. Grabtee?
Yeah, let me see. So this is just the opening lines of chapter 1. And I think you'll get a kind of a taste of his prose is a little purple.
Is it a little purple?
Yeah, but it's I found it charming.
Okay.
So David Grant writes, it was November 8, 1977, Archangel's Day in Greece. Professor Manolis Andronikos, head of the archaeological excavations at the town of Vergina, looked about him at the dignitaries, priests, and a gathering tribe of archaeologists descending upon the burial ground of the ancient city, still debated identity he had slowly been unearthing for years. It was late in the excavation season, and Andronikos had been planning to wrap up the year's dig, with funds only available for a few days more of work. But now television cameras were arriving, tensions were high, and the weather was unseasonably mild and, thankfully, dry. Mm-hmm. He wondered what the day would reveal as he anxiously lit another cigarette.
It is a little purple.
It is, right. But it's very dramatic.
Yeah.
And one of the things I liked about the book. Right.
You remember when we were, I don't think you and I have ever been to Vergina at the same time.
No, I was only there once as a student.
Yes, I was there twice, once with Ken Bratt and once with young Kim.
Yeah.
Your Society of Classical Studies heckler, right?
That's exactly right.
And our guide there, Christiana Dimitra, right, who we both like so much, she pointed out how much Manolis looks like Philip. The profile is almost identical.
Yeah.
And the modern Greeks, they love this.
Yeah, that's a wonderful bit of serendipity.
Okay, so it's 1977.
Yep.
He's smoking his last cigarette.
Right, and the cameras are rolling.
Right.
And so this is where he had unearthed the top kind of arched part of that tomb.
Okay.
But it had not been opened yet. So, I mean, this reminds me, this could go either way. Do you remember Geraldo and
Al Capone's vault?
Right.
That was huge.
Yeah.
In Chicago?
Yes.
I think I even tuned in.
I think I did too as well. He found
there was nothing else on,
a couple of bottles in there, and that was it.
That's right.
But it's that kind of moment where, I like how Grant kind of sets this up, is that Andronikos is the world's watching,
right?
And this could be just a complete bust. But most of the tombs that he had excavated, most tombs that archaeologists do excavate, are already looted.
Yes, that's right. A lot of the Egyptian ones.
Yes.
And this particular region of Macedonia, if I remember, is filled with these tumuli, right?
Yeah.
All over the landscape. Some very small, none as grand as these in Vergina.
Right.
But they look kind of like the cartoonish version of an anthill.
Yes.
I would say that's the approximate slope and such, But the idea is not that there's an aperture, an oculus at the top in the center. It's just a perfect mound, right? And you enter somewhere at the base.
Yes.
So what happened next? Does Grant, does he tell us where things go next?
Definitely. Let me kind of find the next passage here. And this, too, is kind of a wonderful, dramatic description.
And while you're doing that, I could maybe take a moment to remind the listener that we've covered this topic a little bit in the past. It was episode 65, which you titled "I Want My Mummy," right? The Lost Tomb of Alexander.
Yes.
And so this was about how Alexander's body was moved all around, and it's probably in Alexandria.
Yes, somewhere.
In the sewer.
Yes, exactly.
In a glass coffin, encased in honey, riding in a gold chariot, a catafalque.
Yeah.
And so that was it was a long time ago that we covered number 65.
Yeah, and then the strange paradox that this tomb, which was a tourist attraction for hundreds of years, has completely disappeared.
Yes.
Nobody has any idea what happened to it or happened to the
Right. I think you wrote these words. How could this centuries-long tourist attraction, visited by some of the greatest Caesars who ever Caesared, and massive Walmart-sized complex simply vanish?
Yes.
As they say, it's complicated.
It is complicated. Right?
Yeah. So that's Alexander, but Vergina has nothing to do with Alexander himself, right? So far as we know.
Well, this is one of the things that some of the items found in this tomb, there is speculation that Alexander may have sent back to be buried with his father. Okay. And so some of the items may have belonged to him, but that's kind of where the story falls apart.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
But let me read
please
Grant's description of this moment. The crowd watched on November 8, 1977, as Manolis Andronikos prepared himself for the descent into the tomb once the keystone was removed. He had been deeply stirred as the structure emerged from the soil, and when he finally descended into the chamber, his disenchantment at the poorly plastered walls passed instantly when he was awestruck by what gradually emerged below. So this is a detail, is that he comes down, he looks at the walls and says, oh, this is like a storage room.
This Al Capone all over again.
Right. But this later on is interpreted as that it's probably indicative of a hasty burial perhaps after Philip's untimely demise.
So the party's going down, the descent there. Could we call that the dromos?
Yeah.
In the same way that the tomb of Agamemnon's father. What am I thinking of? Agamemnon and Menelaus. Atreus. The tomb of Atreus at Mycenae. That long causeway.
Yes.
Which is it's not sloped down. It's actually sloped up a little bit.
Right.
But these tumules, right? They retained that kind of Mycenaean general design in that there is a dromos, right? There's an approach.
Yes. However, completely buried.
This one's subterranean.
So there's a lot of argument about when these tombs were first built, were they open air? Yeah. And were they only covered later to protect them
against looting?
So, and that's where they kind of become kind of like the treasury of Atreus.
Right. Interesting.
Grant goes on. This is Andronikos, our lead archaeologist. His torch flashlight slowly illuminated a fine rusted iron and gold breastplate, bronze greaves, which were the shin guards of an ancient infantryman, a solid crested iron helmet, a gilded diadem, and the remains of what would prove to be an elaborately decorated shield in ivory, glass, and gold. Beside them rested various weapons with iron blades that were once attached to the now rotted wooden shafts of spears, and the notoriously long, deadly Sarissa of the Macedonian infantrymen, the two-handed pike with which Philip and Alexander had humbled the armies of Greece and Persia.
That's incredible. The Sarissa, the Sarissa, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, 18 feet long. Yeah. And I guess, as I understand, you would grip this thing at about, foot number 6. Mm-hmm. So that it's a little weighted in the back, a little heavier, but it sticks out like an enormous toothpick, like a forest of these things coming at you.
Exactly. And probably links of it too held by your fellow hoplites behind you.
Right.
And so you can...
It's just a bristling wall.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a tank.
Right.
And so you can kind of overrun your enemy and they don't even come within an arm's length of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Incredible. And ran roughshod over the Persians. I guess it was only really the Romans with their maniple formation that eventually beat it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
So one of these was found in Vergina.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, or at least the kind of the point of it.
Yes.
The wood had rotted away. One more paragraph here. Scattered around the chamber were cooking tripods of iron and bronze, alongside silver serving vessels, mixing bowls, and unguent bottles of ceramic or alabaster for banqueting with the gods, among other less easily identifiable grave goods. Andronikos' attention was drawn to a long cylindrical object covered in layers of alternating cloth and gold, surely a royal scepter. Here lay all the objects for the afterlife of a Macedonian king, but the most intriguing object of all was a closed marble sarcophagus suggesting something precious inside.
Yeah.
And that's the big ticket item here.
Right, that's where we're going next.
Yeah.
Before we move on to that, just a note here. bronze cooking tripods is the phrase that Grant used, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
That might be quite unfamiliar to listeners if they haven't studied archaeology before. It sounds like sterno or a campfire or something.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first learning about these things and first visited Delphi, for example, all these bronze tripods.
Right.
What is this? And it was very confusing to me. Jeff, do you have any insight on that?
Well, as far as the Delphic tripods, and I think it's definitely connected to what is found at Macedon. There are artistic scenes in which the tripod seems to be like a trophy, right? Heracles in a wrestling match grabs the tripod and runs off with it, having won the match.
So it's a big hammered bronze bowl that you could put a massive amount of popcorn into, for example.
Lots of popcorn, right?
But then it's propped up, and it's bulbous, like an enormous pumpkin, kind of, right? And then it's propped up by usually 3 skinny bronze legs, making it a tripod.
Yep.
But this is a sacrificial or a dedicatory use. What was it originally used for?
I don't think we know exactly.
Okay.
I mean, at Delphi it becomes a way of, it's an honorific. You leave these behind to thank the god for the wisdom of the oracle.
It's got to be one of the most inconvenient honorifics imaginable, right?
Right.
How do you transport it? How do you store it?
Man.
How do you get someone? I'm being serious. How do you get someone to produce such a thing? It's unusual.
Yeah, I imagine if you brought one of those into the UPS store, they'd roll their eyes.
Right,
What
exactly.
am I supposed to do with this?
And don't even try the USPS.
Yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
You won't make it through the door.
No,
right?
but then griffins mounted around the rim and other kinds of things. Griffins' heads.
Yeah.
So several of these were found at Vergina.
Yes.
Along with a scepter,
drinking vessels,
a sarissa,
a diadem.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the big ticket item, like you said, which is the marble cask.
Yes, exactly. So
casket.
this kind of smallish, squarish sarcophagus with a stone lid.
Right.
And then when this was removed, this is where they find the so-called Larnax, the golden box that had the Macedonian star on the top.
Yes.
And
I've seen that. It's incredible.
It's incredible. It's beautiful.
Yes.
And this is what really got Andronikos' heart racing.
Covered in ivory overlay and gold.
Gold, and so clearly unopened, untouched for 2,300 years.
Yeah, since 323?
Yeah,
is when Alexander died.
Alexander died, right? And so, and if Philip was buried soon after he was murdered, this is go back to 336.
That's right.
Yeah, and then inside, that's where they found this collection of bones,
right?
With that oak leaf.
Yes.
That intricate oak leaf gold crown placed right on top.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Kind of a victory crown. Now, before we back up a little bit and talk about Philip II, I want you to, if you could please, just give us a peek at what Grant originally says about whose bones they are.
Yes.
Before we get to the his final word, or what is the current scholarly consensus? Whose bones are they?
Right. So Andronikos came to the conclusion fairly quickly that this had to be Philip II's tomb.
Okay.
He made that kind of mild claim before kind of testing could be done. And when the bones were studied, what they found was that this was the remains of likely an adult male, somewhere probably between 40 and 50 years old.
Right.
The spine bones showed that this was a man who had spent a lot of time in the saddle.
Wow.
You could see the kind of fusing of those bones down there. And then the controversy comes in is Philip II had these famous injuries to one. His eye was taken out.
That's right.
He took a spear through the thigh,
right,
which left him kind of gimpy and limpy for the last part of his life. Do the bones reveal that?
Yes.
And that's where the controversy comes in.
Did he get something in the shin? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, exactly.
And so the greaves that were found there, they're of different size, right? Or
yes.
One shows that it had been potentially adapted.
Yes.
To fit a man who had a shin injury, a shinjury.
Right. And so that's another reason they think, yes, this is all pointing to Philip II. There is disagreement because there were other tombs found there as well,
right,
and other sets of bones, and there are other scholars that say no, this other tomb is likely Philip II.
Right. And Alexander II, right? There's some other family members that are buried there.
Alexander the fourth.
The fourth.
Yeah,
sorry.
So Alexander's son, by one of his Bactrian wives,
right,
who was murdered very young.
Yeah, as an adolescent.
Yes. By
some competitor, right? Some competitor of Alexander.
Yeah. So there's this really fascinating tension is that I think we've mentioned even on the show
sure,
about how the Macedonians, as they arise to power, there seems to be a desperation on their part to be seen as legitimately Greek.
Yes.
Right. And so, like a famous example, so Philip II himself goes down to Olympia, competes in the chariot races, wins.
Right.
And one of the things that he does, you can still see it there, his Philippeion.
Yes.
This Tholos-style temple.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And where he puts inside statues of himself and his family members.
Right.
And such. But one of the really striking things that he does, it's inside the altus. Right? It's inside that sacred boundary.
Right.
Where everything else inside the altus at Olympia is dedicated to gods or heroes. And here he brings his own family.
That's
inside.
right.
So that was kind of his...
That's a mafia move.
That's a total mafia move.
Right.
And then also, they lure Euripides,
yes,
Aristotle,
yes,
up there. I mean, they are so desperate to be seen as legitimately, scholarly Greek. They have this deep, abiding love and devotion to Homer.
Yes,
but at the same time, the royal family, the genealogical tree, is an absolute mess. So Philip takes on at least 7 wives, has multiple children. All the wives are attacking each other.
Right.
None more famously than Olympias, who was Alexander's mother. And once Philip dies, she starts.
It's a free for all.
Talking about like a mafia.
Yes.
Move. It's an absolute kind of barbaric slaughter.
Yeah. Well, bringing in Euripides and Aristotle reminds me of that scene from The Jerk, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Where he becomes very, very rich, right? And so he's playing tennis, and he goes up to the water cooler, and he has these wine glasses, disposable wine glasses that drop down, like the little paper cups.
Yes.
And he puts it up, and he fills it from the wine cooler, and he says to the Bernadette Peters character, "Do you realize we've acquired the culture in 2 weeks that it takes some people years to acquire?" Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
To me, that's
very much like what's going on here.
That's Philip.
That's right. Right.
So you snotty Greeks, we've got our Euripides, we've got our Aristotle.
Right. And so down south in Athens, the Macedonians are derided as, milk drinking,
fur wearing
barbarians,
polygamous,
and to some degree it's on point.
Okay.
Right. But I guess the long pike, the Sarissa, has the last word.
That's a good point, so to speak. This seems like a good moment to bring in Demosthenes.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because he was raging against Philip II.
So in case our audience is not familiar, who is Demosthenes and how does he figure?
The greatest orator of Greece, 4th century. Proximate dates 390, 385. I'm going to be honest, I used to have it nailed down.
Yeah.
Now I've just got an approximation to say 385, maybe a little bit earlier than that, down into the 330s.
He dies famously in the same year as Alexander and Aristotle, 323.
Yeah,
that triple.
Yes.
That
so you
death.
checked the dates. Good job.
Yes. There we go.
You got me there. He is the apex of eloquence, right?
Yes.
And the career of Cicero is unimaginable, without Demosthenes, because he imitated him. Just one example, the constant not onlys but also that you find in Ciceronian prose, non solum sed etiam and so forth, is just uman and alakai from Demosthenes, not only but also.
Right.
But anyway, we got the first Philippic here, which I think helps set the stage a little bit for what happened to Philip at the end of his life, and why his burial is fascinating.
Dave, before we get to maybe some quotes from Demosthenes, you have a quote there from a book that I think that sets this up nicely.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is called Alexander the Great and His Time, which is by one Agnes Saville, and it's 1993. And so I'm reading, it's a reprint. 1993 is the reprint of Professor Saville. And she says on page 3, Alexander of Macedon lived in the century which followed the great days of Greece, when Athens, under the guidance of Pericles, her leading statesman, had gained a deservedly high reputation as the chief city in Greece. Contest with Sparta, this would be the Peloponnesian War, had led to a prolonged war which left her exhausted, both by land and sea, subject to a ruthless and oligarchic Spartan domination. This was so resented that after a few years democratic rule was restored, but it had not the high traditions of public life which had characterized the time of Pericles. However, during the 4th century BC, international trade prospered. Games and festivities were organized to please the populace. Paid members of the tribunal incited class antagonism. A proletariat developed, impoverished and workless. As Greeks were known to be splendid warriors, many were hired as mercenaries, etc. We come down to the end of it. Thus, it had not been difficult for Persia to force upon Greece in 386 BC a humiliating peace. Persia acquired control over the Greek cities on the Asiatic coast, that would be Ionia, and gained the right to interfere in the affairs of the Greek communities.
I mean, that's such a great reminder. I think back to my time in studying this period.
Right.
It's very easy to kind of come away from, say, the history of the 5th century and say, oh, well, after Salamis and Plataea, the Persians no longer were a threat.
No.
It's not true.
Right.
They'd be chased off for a while, but that's still a threat right on the edge.
They're always there with their massive amount of money,
yes.
Trying to, from the Greek perspective, meddle in Greek politics. Mm-hmm. So the Greeks were very happy killing one another, right? But it seems to be in the first half of the 4th century, so 399, down to Alexander. That's our business.
Yes.
The Persians killing Greeks. So Demosthenes, right, is on this Panhellenic project. Let's unite all the Greeks together to resist Persia. But, as we know, who was it that united the Greeks?
Alexander.
Right.
Yes.
Philip tried.
Right.
So in the case of Demosthenes, it's a little bit of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, Philip and Alexander, they did it. They united Greeks, but at the point of a very heavy spear.
That's correct. Right. The Sarissa again.
Yeah. Do you want to read some of the first Philippic there?
Yes, I would. Right. So
give us a little Greek, would you?
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So this is taken from the Loeb edition of 1954, Demosthenes Volume 1, with an English translation by J.H. Vince. I think I mentioned 1954. So section 16 here. So this is Kata Philippon against Philip, Alpha. So the first Philippic. Proton mentoinuno andres Athenaioi trieres pentekonta paraskewasastai femidein. Et autus hutotas gnomas ekenhos, antide e plausteon estautas autois embasen prostitutois tois he misesi ton hipeon hypagogus trieres kai ploi hikana eutrapisai kalewo.
I'm already
one sentence.
I'm already persuaded.
Yeah. Demosthenes, what an incredible character.
Yeah.
Can you read us the translation, please?
Sure. First then, men of Athens, I propose to equip 50 war galleys. Next, you must make up your minds to embark and sail in them yourselves, if necessary. Further, I recommend the provision of transports and other vessels, sufficient for the conveyance of half our cavalry. All this is a necessary provision against Philip's sudden raids from Macedonia against Thermopylae, the Chersonese, Olynthus, or where he will. You must present this to his mind, the consideration that you may possibly shake off your excessive apathy and strike out as you did at Euboea, and before that, as we are told, at Haliartus, and quite recently at Thermopylae.
Yeah.
What strikes me about this opening is that it's not deeply philosophical.
No.
He's not kind of appealing to ideology, saying this is the problem, and this is what you need to do. It's very practical.
There is a lot of what you mentioned in the speech.
Yeah.
There's a lot of appeal to divine providence. There's an appeal to past glory. There's an appeal to philosophical considerations and so forth. But here, you're right. It's a deliberative speech. This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Right. Telling them. And Philip is the threat.
Yeah.
So Demosthenes, for a long, long time, right, stands against Philip, the danger from the north, and eventually he organized all of Greece. Peter Brown is the first. Peter Green.
Yes.
Of Brackish Tang fame.
Yes.
Peter Green is the first person that got me thinking hard about Philip II because he calls Philip the most underrated general of antiquity.
Yeah, well, he's murdered off the stage,
right? And
then of course he's overshadowed by his son.
Yeah, eclipsed.
Yeah, but without a doubt, I think without Philip II, there's no Atlas.
Definitely not.
Right? Yeah,
right. So where are we headed next, Jeff?
Right. So we can fast forward here a bit. After the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip II is in charge. As the story goes, his son Alexander is a teenager, probably 18 at that battle, displays great heroism and courage, leading the cavalry. And after that battle, it's very clear that Macedonia is in charge of all of Greece.
It's regnant.
Right.
And all the city-states, they have to capitulate, right?
Yeah.
They're given kind of a Romanesque sort of offering, right? You can join. You'll never be in charge again, but you can join the Macedonians because we're the real Greeks,
right? Or
you can resist and be annihilated,
right? And that's what happened famously with the Thebans.
That's correct.
They massacred
Alexander.
Yeah, exactly. And those speaking of archaeology, the skeletons of those soldiers were found.
Really?
Yeah. And then Athens, I think, learned their lessons and say, okay, we'll do whatever you want,
Right.
and we're spared that.
Yeah, very famously, I think it's in Plutarch. I'm not sure. I could check, but there was one house in all of Thebes that Alexander did not
Is that right?
raze to the ground, and it's the house of Pindar.
Oh, I have heard that story. That's right.
I think it's in Plutarch. The house of Pindar was the only one, spared. So if anything terrible ever happens, I guess this is probably not funny, ever happens to your neighborhood there, the people would all be gone, right? Of course, we're not going to.
That's right.
But the Heritage Hill area, would the house of Winkle be spared?
I don't think I don't have the cachet of a Pindar.
No.
I need to work on that. See, if I were mononymous,
Yeah.
I would be more likely to be spared.
Sure plays a mean Pindar.
That's a future episode title.
Okay.
Right there.
So they take over all of Greece, Philip II does, but then, and he's preparing, so we think, to march east and take revenge on Persia.
Take out Persia, yes.
Yeah, but I guess it's presented in very high and noble terms as revenge on Persia for the misdeeds of the 5th century. I think most contemporary scholars, you can tell me whether Grant shares this, Grabty, believe that Philip is just opportunism, it's imperialism.
Right. Yeah, kind of, I think masked in that, I think it's another way that the Macedonians kind of said, look, we're Greeks. We're going to finish the job that you Southern Greeks weren't able to do.
Yes.
Right. And so what would be the ultimate way of proving their Greekness is defeating that that ancient enemy.
Yeah. And they also claimed a descent from Hercules.
Right.
And from the Homeric heroes.
Yes, right.
Iliad and Odyssey.
Famously slept with his copy of the Iliad.
Right.
Had committed most of it to memory.
That's right.
The story goes. Right. So, but then Philip is murdered.
Yes.
So in October of 336.
Wow.
He is hosting the wedding celebration of his daughter Cleopatra, not the famous Cleopatra, of course,
but an ancestress.
Yes.
Of the famous Cleopatra.
Right. Yeah. About 300 years later, right, coming along.
Glory of the father is what the name means.
Right. So this was a daughter by one of his 7 wives. It's not Olympias, and one of his servants, a certain Pausanias, and not the travel guide guy.
Yes.
Steps forward as he's entering the theater there at Aigai
right.
and stabs him fatally.
Lots of speculation.
Why he does this, right?
Yes, it was a lover's quarrel. Right. Was he paid off by Olympias?
Right.
Was it, I don't know, the guy took his parking spot? I'm not sure it's clear.
It's not exactly clear why he does this. But yeah, I mean, the lover's spat is often brought up. We know that Philip had not only kind of his 7 wives, but he had affairs with a number of men as well.
Right.
It just makes this whole kind of untangling the story just an absolute headache.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's murdered, and the Pausanias and then other conspirators are rounded up, and as was the practice, they were executed over the grave.
Wow.
And so in terms, when Andronikos excavates this tomb, one of the things that they found is on top of the tomb, they found the remnants of the cremation. If it's Philip, they found where he was cremated, and they also found fragments and bones that didn't belong to the skeleton in the tomb. It's thought these are the bones of the conspirators.
But also one of his wives, right?
Well, in the tomb, or were you?
I don't know. I thought there was a tradition. I remember being told this when we were there and reading it somewhere.
Yeah.
That there was a tradition that the favorite wife was to die with the king.
Right. Yes. As far as we can tell, that did not happen here. I mean, one of the things that happened. So Olympia takes advantage of the power vacuum, and has a number of her rival wives, either sent off packing or murdered, and quickly is trying to kind of steer the power to her son Alexander III.
Did you see the which is the Alexander, number 3?
Yep.
Did you see the Oliver Stone movie with
Colin Farrell
playing
Alexander
and Val Kilmer playing Philip? I think
I never did see. I heard it was so bad.
Angelina Jolie playing Olympias.
Yeah. No, I heard it was so bad. And it was also like over 3 hours.
Yeah, that's long.
That's a long time. Did you see it?
I did.
Yeah? What did you think?
I can't recommend it, but one of the things people often say about movies like that is they rave about the cinematography.
Yeah.
If the dialogue's bad, if the performances are bad, if the costuming is bad, then the cinematography is going to rescue it.
Right.
And so the filming was beautiful. I have to assume it was shot on location in some of these places.
Yeah.
Especially when they got east to Bactria and so forth. And the incredible landscapes, and there was some decent battle scenes and such, but no, I can't recommend.
Do you
it.
remember if so Oliver Stone is did he have some kind of conspiratorial axe to grind?
Absolutely.
Right, so was this JFK?
I think he makes I think actually JFK was responsible for the death of Philip in the Oliver Stone telling.
Right.
It was a Sarissa from a grassy knoll.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's what I remember.
That would be. Oh man, that would have been a great SNL skit.
I
20 years ago. When this, right?
And speaking of grassy knolls,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
Right.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good folks at Ratio Coffee. Our good friend Mark Helweg, the entrepreneur, was tired of of consuming mass-produced coffee. Decided to invent some machines known as the Ratio Coffee machine. And Mark has brought to us the 8, the 6, and now the 4.
Yep.
And I understand, Jeff, you have some interesting things to report there about the 4 and about Mark in general.
Yes, I found this quote from Mark, which I thought was really nice, and it kind of reveals his passion and what you can expect from these wonderful machines. So this is from an article earlier in January by Emily Caldwell, where she quotes Mark saying, "Coffee is a beautiful ritual. It shouldn't be that complicated, nor should your coffee at home lack the nuance and depth you can get at a cafe. I enjoy receiving notes from our customers after they set up their ratio machine and brewed a few batches. Our products aren't designed for everyone. They are designed for people who love beauty, quality, and simplicity. When that person gets a ratio and sees the details that went into the design, that's my favorite thing about this industry. It's a tough time to be in the manufacturing and retail business, but these accolades drive us forward to keep innovating in the coffee space."
That's very well said.
Yeah. I love that.
Beauty, quality, and simplicity.
Right. And that's what those are the perfect words to describe.
Absolutely.
Every machine that I've used the 8, the 6, and the 4, and that's true of all of them.
Yes, so those are my principles too: beauty, quality, simplicity, occasionally absurdity, I suppose.
Yes.
Did you have any coffee this morning?
I did. Yeah.
Not the 4, because that's at the office.
That's it. So I had my 8 queued up and ready to go. The grounds were there waiting for me. Hit the button.
Stainless steel.
Yep, stainless steel. You've got the glass carafe?
No, I've got the oyster shell.
Oyster shell, that's
with the walnut accent, but that baby's in storage temporarily because I'm strictly a 4 guy now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm loving it.
Man,
it's
fantastic.
very good.
Well, you are the only coffee drinker in the house, right? So it's all for you.
It's all for me.
That's fantastic.
Yep, and I got that little aftermarket carafe, keeps it nice and warm. But you can also use, as you do, the nice smoky glass carafe, smoky colored, beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's say, listener, you'd like to score one of these machines. Here's what you should do, I suggest. Go to ratiocoffee.com/ad nauseam. So we have our own web extension.
Excellent.
Ad nauseam, ADNAVSEAM, ad nauseam, not case sensitive. Pick out the machine that you like, and then, Jeff, what do they need to do?
Then you type in your coupon code, which is ANRATIO, ANRATIO 2025.
Yes.
So that's the coupon code, and that will get you $20 off your entire order.
Yes, $20 off any ratio machine at checkout. And, if you're looking for an entry-level way to up your coffee game, I suggest you start with a 4.
Yes.
And then if you find that, this is really great and I would like to share this delightful experience with others, upgrade to the 6 or the 8.
Yeah, excellent. Check it out. This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you by Hackett Publishing. These guys have been with us since the very beginning. We're going to also getting on almost 5 years
Almost
now.
5 years.
Yeah, and they've stuck with us. They're one of these wonderful companies that are keeping the flame alive.
Yep.
We love their books. We love their affordability. We love the quality of the translations. We love the multiplicity of their offerings. So if listeners, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing that you love books.
Yeah, you're a reader. You're probably building a library for yourself. Maybe you're refining a library. Maybe you're building a library for someone else.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit before about how it's a dangerous thing to buy books for someone.
It is.
Or to be more specific, it's a dangerous thing to buy books for me.
Right. Yes. It's like buying clothes for people.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah. Here's your waist size. Try that on.
Right.
But not from Hackett.
No.
Right? Because I'm sure they have a great return policy, but why would you want to return anything from Hackett? Because the combination of quality and price, unbeatable. Last week, we did a couple of Ovidian vignettes, and we used the Ambrose translation of the Metamorphoses. We used the Lombardo. Can't go wrong.
You cannot go wrong. Do yourself a favor. Go to hackettpublishing.com. That's HACKETT publishing.com. Check out their tremendous wide-ranging offerings. Find the books that you want, drop them into the grocery basket, and if you use this coupon code, AN2025, that's AN as an ad nauseum plus the current year, Dave, that will get them
20% off their entire order, and I think the shipping is triple the price.
It is free shipping.
What?
Dave.
Free shipping?
Yep, 20% off and free shipping.
That is incredible. So I don't think they sell Sarissa.
No, not yet.
But if they did, the shipping would be free.
That's right. So check it out.
Okay, Jeff, as we get back into the meat of this episode, we're looking now at the disappearance of Aigai and the tombs.
Yes. This is something that is fascinating to me, and I noticed that when I taught this subject, this theme, and others this past fall, what surprises my students is how can something that big and important just simply disappear?
Yeah, like the Washington Monument, right? Where'd it go?
Where did it go? Or even like a place like Pompeii was like accidentally rediscovered in the 1600s.
Yes.
And how is that even possible?
Well, there were rumors, I guess, about it being there. Speaking of Pompeii.
Yeah.
And the locals had some kind of a sense that there's something unusual here.
Right.
But in terms of, the international attention, there was nothing.
Nothing, right. And so a similar thing with the Aigai. And so Grant does a really good job of kind of retracing the answer to this question of what happened to it. And so if you listen to our episode, it was episode 65?
It was number 65.
Yes.
I Want My Mummy.
Yes.
The Lost Tomb of Alexander the Great.
We talked about how when Alexander dies in Babylon, the original plan was for the body to be taken back to Aigai and to be buried probably alongside of his father. But Ptolemy interrupts the funeral procession and steers the body back down towards Alexander.
Steals it and takes it to Egypt.
Right? Exactly.
You talk about a mafia move, right?
A total mafia.
He's on his deathbed. He takes off his high school ring, right?
Exactly.
Did Alexander letter in 4 sports?
He did. Oh man, he was huge.
He probably gave his ring to one of the girls, and they wrapped yarn around it.
That's right. So
they
it would fit.
Do you remember that?
Do you remember that?
Is that Midwest Americana?
I think so.
It's not international, probably.
I think that's something that's also that is gone.
It's fallen by the wayside.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not going to mourn its departure.
I remember that.
But nevertheless, where were we? Ptolemy steals his body.
Right.
And he says, when someone asks Alexander on his deathbed, who's going to rule in your absence? And he says, takes off the ring and says, my power goes to the strongest.
Yeah, real helpful, Alex.
Exactly.
You're not setting up anything bad there.
It's actually a move that had to be inspired by the golden apple, right?
Of Paris.
That's right.
Exactly. Choosing. Right. But that, if indeed that's not apocryphal, that's a first domino that leads to
I think it's apocryphal.
It's apocryphal?
I think so.
It's not apocryphal.
So steals the body.
Steals the body. And so Grant talks about how, ultimately, the tomb of Alexander is built in Alexandria,
right? And
that decenters kind of the power away from Macedon. Right? The focus is now is Ptolemy's power. He becomes kind of the richest and most influential.
Yes, the Seleucids can't compete, and Antigonus, the one-eyed, and all those guys.
Right.
Ghost on the throne, right?
Yeah.
Is it James Rome?
James Rome, yes.
Yeah, that book. That's all. I read that one. Long read.
Yes. Yeah. The long read.
Long read.
Right. Yeah. So he was
so complicated.
He was Jamie Rome was on the part of my fellowship group at the American Academy at Rome.
Oh, when you were looking at the
Trajan's column.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was he like?
He was a nice guy.
You gonna dish?
He had his 2 very studious daughters with him, and he kind of kept to himself. He was kind of the one guy in the group that the rest of us were very convivial and got along. He was kind of on the edges. But a very nice guy.
That would be me, probably.
Nice guy, really?
Yeah, pensive and difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, after this, Macedon becomes less important.
Right.
And so in the 3rd century BC, the Gauls invade. Lots of the early tombs that Andronikos finds were likely looted during this Gallic invasion.
So that stuff's lost forever,
yes.
Whatever they took.
Right. And so it's thought maybe in anticipation of this, perhaps this is where Philip's tomb and the other tombs were buried to protect them, and the Gauls didn't find them. Then later on, the Rome invades. It finally destroys or defeats the Macedonian army and levels Aigai to the ground.
So that was in 168.
Right.
Right. So Rome is reaching the apex of her power, you might say, and eclipsing all of the Greek city-states.
Exactly.
They got the Aetolian League, and they have the Achaean League. There's some very bush league, frankly. efforts to resist the Romans.
Yes.
But that settles all of Greece, and it just becomes another Roman province.
Indeed, right. And then it's thought that sometime in the 100s BC that there's a landslide, maybe as a result of an earthquake, and that buries Aigai for good.
Landslide.
And then after Rome crumbles and falls apart, 4th, 5th century AD, it just kind of exists in legend, and it's gone.
Insult to injury when the landslide comes along, right?
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So it's gone.
It's gone
until 1977, or how long does it stay gone?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that there are still some archaeologists and scholars who believe that this is not Aigai.
Okay.
They found the palace, they found the theater, they found the tombs. To me, I think it's a fringe theory.
Okay.
But there's still there's nobody found a sign, welcome to Aigai,
right?
Population blank or whatever.
Yeah, geocache or something like that.
Right.
So is this akin to the conspiracy that the Heinrich Schliemann forged the Mask of Agamemnon? Is it at that level?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's that.
It's a little more legitimate.
Yes, exactly. I don't think any serious scholar doubts that this is Aigai.
Okay.
But yeah, Andronikos starts excavating there in 1962.
Yeah, born in I think you have down here born in 1919.
Yes,
so 1962. He's 43.
Yes,
years old.
43. That's where he starts, and then he doesn't discover the tombs until 15 years later.
Wow.
Long time excavating here, and that's one of the kind of the exasperating things about this story is about how little money there is for this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and these archaeologists have to work on these shoestring budgets. Right. There's a.
I always thought they used toothbrushes because the archaeology, the remains were delicate, and you want to. But maybe these are just old toothbrushes they're using because that's all they can afford.
Right. So Grant sets up in this book kind of the hero and heroine of the story.
Okay.
This married couple, Theo and Laura Antikos. Theo's a Greek, Laura is a American. And they are kind of a team, a husband and wife team of archaeologists. And they're the ones who really kind of push for, one of the things they found was a number of these bones that were found in one of the tombs wound up in a shoebox in the back room of a museum.
Oh no.
And so they kind of tracked down, followed the paper trail and found these and really kind of pushed these things to get tested.
Right.
And one of the really frustrating things about the book is not only how there's very little money for this. I can understand that.
Sure.
But the protection of turf.
Oh,
right. It becomes so petty.
Well, that's related to
nothing gets done.
It's related to the small amount of money.
Right.
Because you're competing for, whoever. Can you imagine working on something for 15 years with very little success?
Yeah. Man.
It's like our friendship, frankly. If you worked on anything for 15, Andronikos, he was at this a long time before he hit pay dirt.
Exactly, right. And you can imagine having to appeal to the people holding the purse strings back in Athens or Thessaloniki, and they're saying, "What have you got to show for this?"
Right.
And it's just
got some bones in a shoebox.
One empty trench after another.
That's right. A lot of used toothbrushes.
So Grant sets this up very dramatically, but it's almost like when right before Andronikos finds the tombs, it's like, this is the last.
Okay.
This is the last shot. But yes, I think the turf wars is over. There's competition over very little money, but there's also this extreme pride.
Yeah.
Right. They said, no, we're not going to let you kind of borrow this stuff. This is if anybody's going to make write the paper, write the book, it's going to be us. But then nothing happened.
Yes. So when we interviewed Margot Fox, remember about Michael Ventris?
Yes.
Why can't I remember the woman's
Alice
name?
Kober.
Oh, thank you. Because that's ironic. The heroine of her story, I forget her name. But the great, it was Arthur Evans, right? The great Minoan expert.
Yes.
Delayed
Yes.
the publication of the Minoan inscriptions, causing all kinds of trouble for apparently the same sorts of reasons.
Right. So there's a story here where this husband and wife team, they finally get the rights to study this set of bones and try to solve one of these controversies, and it's gonna involve bringing in academic expertise from Oxford, from America,
of course,
equipment, and they give them 6,000 euros for like a 5-year study.
Oh wow!
It's nothing.
So the 6,000 euros is from the Greek government.
Yes.
Huh.
Right. That was the grant that they had.
Wow.
It's nothing.
It's a couple bowls of olives, if I'm not mistaken.
Totally. Right. So that's really, really frustrating. And so the book at the end, he's Grant is planning a second book because he's hoping that some of this stuff will take place.
All right.
But with some of the kind of the more recent technological breakthroughs, doing DNA analysis,
Yes.
right, and so the idea is that if we can't figure out who these bones belong to, we can figure out, are these people related to each other?
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And that would answer like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in
Right.
solving crimes.
Right. I was wondering about that earlier in the episode. Is that can DNA be extracted from these bones?
Yes.
And what could be made of that?
Right. So that's where they've kind of determined the answer that your question is, can it be extracted? The answer is yes.
Okay.
But now the people are hanging on to the bones, and it's this impasse. It's money. It's
Right.
It's turf. It's clout. It's so frustrating.
That's frustrating.
Right. But I think
Maybe when the podcast really takes off, we can start funding these kinds of things.
Yes.
Get some answers.
Wouldn't that be great?
What's the guy that you like, Keith, on Dateline?
Keith Morrison.
That's right. We could hire him to get to the bottom of it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I will have those like a little stoplight kind of fantasies.
Right.
If like I won the lottery.
Yeah.
The kind of stuff.
Is it when you're going by that billboard on 28th Street that shows the Powerball at 133 million?
Exactly. That's right.
Me too.
And I say, oh man, the stuff that I would be able to fund.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And there Philip died. Or did he?
Did he? And then there was that pesky DNA.
That's right. So in 1977, Andronikos finds shrine tombs 1 through 4.
Yes.
And then he finds the hero shrine,
Yep.
which is probably a heroine, right?
Right.
Shrine of a hero dedicated to the worship of the family of Philip II.
Yes. Right. And I think just in the interest of time,
Yes.
there's so much to cover here. What the one of the controversies that the book is really dedicated to is this other set of bones that was found in Philip's tomb. So Philip's bones are in the main chamber. Andronikos kind of kicks out a stone, which would take you into the vestibule,
Right.
Right, and there he finds another one of these.
What's a tomb without a vestibule?
Exactly, and there he finds another one of these sarcophagi, and inside is another one of these Larnax, and there he finds the bones. Kind of long story short, bones of a mysterious woman.
Okay.
And the cremation, again, cremated. It does not seem there was the kind of care that we see with Philip's bones. There we see they were burned. They were kind of cleaned of the ash and kind of ordered neatly. This was a more kind of hasty burial. But this is a bones of a woman, probably around age 30-ish. And the big mystery is that she's buried with these what appear to be Scythian battle gear.
Ah.
So, and we knew there was the Scythians are deeply related to the Amazon myths, right?
Yes.
And were famous for their warrior
So this is
women.
northeast of modern day Greece and of ancient Greece, right?
Right.
On the west coast of the Black Sea, nomadic people.
Yeah.
Herodotus dedicates a whole book to the Scythians.
Yes.
So that's the people we're talking
That's what we were
about.
talking about. Right? So she's buried with the trappings and the honors of apparently a Scythian warrioress. And so the ongoing mystery is, who is this woman?
Right.
And this is where I got frustrated with Grant.
Okay.
He kind of,
So we're at the last quarter of the book?
yes,
Okay.
right. And so here he's kind of dropping all of these kind of these crazy speculations, and he's going to various academics and say, hey, what about this person? What about this person? And it kind of like, well, that's an interesting idea, but it goes nowhere.
It doesn't pan out.
It doesn't pan out. So one of the going theories, I find this really interesting, is that we do know that towards the end of Philip's life is that he went to war with the Scythians.
Okay.
And he had to make he made a treaty with them, and the theory is that one of the ways these kinds of treaties were sealed is that he would marry the daughter of the local king.
Yes.
He kind of cement the alliance. Now, there's no evidence in the histories that happened.
Okay.
But the idea is that it did happen, it just wasn't recorded. And so this would have been kind of his last, maybe like his 8th wife.
Okay.
And then when she died or was killed, she was buried with her husband.
So that could be the individual.
That could be.
Scythian woman, 8th wife.
Right.
Not attested in any of the historical sources.
Right.
But a common practice.
Yes.
So that's a summary of the argument?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But I mean, ultimately unprovable. So Grant talks a lot about these about the bones, about the remains there, how we find corollaries in Scythian tombs and the like. There too, a pair of greaves were found.
Okay.
And
those are the shin guards again.
The shin guards, right? And through the kind of a thorough study of the bones of this woman, which this husband and wife couple did for the first time just a few years ago, they showed that her bones were misshapen in a way that the greaves fit the legs.
Huh.
And so that suggests that these weren't just decorative, that these were actually worn. Right.
Fascinating.
Another kind of theory that I found semi-persuasive is that Grant suggests that this might be the bones of a woman by the name of Kinane, who would have been a half-sister of Alexander's, the daughter of another one of Philip's brides.
Okay.
And she, too, the histories record that she had kind of Amazonian pretensions.
Yeah.
And that she was a rare Macedonian woman who fought and famously killed an Illyrian queen. And so could that would have been a suitable burial for her too. But the question is, well, why is she buried in Philip's tomb?
Right.
In the antechamber.
Right.
These are
haste, mistake.
Right. Was she murdered? Did she die young? And it was kind of quickly done. I mean, the cremation of her bones covered in ash suggests this was a very hasty job,
a rush job.
But that's where that Grant just kind of spins off, and he offers at least 3 or 4 different names that it could possibly be, and it just becomes like enough, stop talking.
Do you have the impression? Because I've done this sometimes, maybe even in the show, when you've done a lot of research and you got a lot of material, you really want to find a way to use it,
right? Yeah.
Even if it's not apropos to your subject, apropos of your subject. Did you get the impression with Grant that he's, I did all this work. I got to have a place to put it.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't fit great, but maybe someone will find it interesting.
Yes.
I mean, there are worse things.
There are worse things, right? I think the way he sets it kind of brings it together is his hope is that when the DNA analysis comes in, maybe one of his theories will kind of hit the mark.
I see.
Yeah.
Well,
That's fair.
There's some reason to that.
Yeah.
The bottom of page 5 here, as we start to wind down, you've got this great note here about what was included in the grave. The bones of 4 horses and 9 dogs.
Yeah, this is in Philip's grave.
Yeah, the funeral of Patroclus in Iliad 23. So the funeral games for Patroclus.
Yes.
Can you read some of that there?
Sure. This is from English translation of the Iliad. King Agamemnon, hearing this, promptly dismissed the men to their well-crafted ships. Though the chief mourners remained, and piling up the wood to make the pyre 100 feet square, sad at heart, they placed the corpse on top. So this is the funeral of Patroclus. They flayed and dressed numerous fine sheep and sleek shambling cattle before the pyre. Those Homeric sheep, those cattle are always shambling.
They shamble.
They shamble.
Why should Homeric cattle be in a hurry? Let them shamble, I say.
Right. And noble Achilles took fat from them all and wrapped the corpse in it, head to foot, and piled the flayed carcasses around. And then he leaned 2-handled jars of oil and honey against the bier, and groaning aloud swiftly threw the bodies of 4 proud horses on the pyre. Of the 9 dogs Patroclus fed beneath his table, Achilles cut the throats of 2 and threw their bodies on the pyre. So there seems to be a corollary between kind of sacrificing horses and dogs, as a way of kind of honoring the dead.
It's aristocratic, right?
Yes,
you ride the horse, you hunt with the dog.
Exactly. And then also clearly this is the Macedonians kind of again claiming their Homeric ancestry.
Yeah, 7 dogs?
Something like that.
7 dogs around the table?
Yes. Yeah. And so they found the bones of these horses and dogs in the burial chamber. And
no, I'm sorry, 9 dogs.
9 dogs.
That Patroclus fed beneath his. That's a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot.
Would you want to eat at that table?
No, okay. Thank you. Right. So that's thought to be
right.
This is a nod. This is an allusion to Homer.
Life imitates art.
Yeah.
So let's take Homer as our script here.
Yeah.
And throw the bones of these animals into the burial of Philip II.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So the cliffhanger in the book is Grant comes around to which I think is largely the consensus is that the bones in the main chamber this is Philip II. Okay. There are disagreements at the fringes, but the big mystery is who's the mysterious woman in the antechamber.
You think this could ever be made into a movie? Either the life of Andronikos, or some of this has already been made into a movie of sorts. But I'm thinking of the different made-for-TV series. Like I haven't seen this one, but the Borgias and so forth.
Oh yeah.
These kind of
palace intrigue.
Yes, it's very popular now, and this is the original palace intrigue.
Oh man, exactly. Yeah, this would be. You'd have to watch that with a program,
right?
Like with this too,
the complication,
right? Oh, it's so complicated. Like, so I printed in
on page 8 here
the
family tree.
I had my finger on that page because I had to keep coming back. Like, who?
No wonder
who
you were
talking about. Right.
It's so complicated.
It is so complicated. Right. And then add to this, so Alexander, he marries a number of Persian women. Yeah. Towards the end of his life, he has a son with one, a Heracles with Barcine, and Alexander IV with Roxanne, And it's one of the undisputed things about these finds is that tomb number 3
Yes.
holds the bones and remains of Alexander IV.
That's what I wanted to ask you about right before we wind down here. The tomb of Alexander IV, tomb 3, is probably Alexander IV.
Yes.
So is this Alexander III, the Great? Is this his half brother?
This would be his son.
His son. Sorry.
Right. So there was his half brother who was apparently a half wit.
Right.
Right. So he's
that's what I was thinking.
He's also murdered.
Okay.
And so some have thought that some of these other bones from the other tombs might be his, but it's but Alexander IV was murdered by a certain Cassander who was married to one of Alexander's half sisters, Thessaloniki, right?
After whom he named the city, right, of Thessaloniki.
Right. And so to strong arm power,
right?
Buried there, and there the bones bear out the bones of a young man between 14 and 17, which would match perfectly.
Awful way to end. Right. What a way to live too.
Yeah.
Be killed by your uncle because you're thought at the age of 14 maybe.
Yeah.
To be a threat to his claim to the throne.
Exactly.
Awful.
So apparently Roxanne and Alexander's son, the fourth, made their way back to Macedon with perhaps the hopes of kind of carrying on the dynasty through that bloodline.
Incredible.
But they were both murdered. Yeah.
Well, to bring the episode full circle, we could say something about Roxanne and Sting here.
That's right.
But I'll resist.
Okay. Well, man, it does feel like a missed opportunity.
It was close.
It was close.
We do have to get out of here, though, Jeff, don't we?
We do. Yes.
And why is that?
Is somebody beating at the door?
No, there is no door. You could tell the listeners, if you want, about the renovations in the vomitorium.
Yeah, there's a new door.
Right.
It just needs to be kind of put in place.
It needs to be hung.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's being framed in. Some of that happened this morning, so we just have it leaned precipitously.
Yeah.
Not sure we're going to get out of here. This could be our Vergina.
It could be. We're trapped in here.
Yeah. So that's going to make for some better acoustics and so forth.
Yeah.
But so nobody's pounding on this door because there isn't a door.
There's no door.
Yeah.
So
still, we need to leave.
We're up against the clock. We got to get out of here. But Dave, before we do, I'm sure there's lots of our listeners who would love to learn some Latin, would love to learn Greek, love to be able to read Greek so mellifluously like you do.
That's kind of you.
And how should they do that?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, so much. So this week and the last, I and those who help me with my projects, Mishka and others, we've been laboring to get the website, the new Latin Per Diem website, in place and going strong.
Yeah.
It's really quite incredible. So there's no more Moss Method website. All the content is hosted directly at latinperdiem.com. We're using what I probably should have used a long time ago, a learning management system, a course management system.
Okay.
So you take one of my courses, it takes you through step by step. It's so beautifully designed and laid out. You finish one lesson, you listen to the audio, you read the story, you learn some grammar, you finish an assignment, you submit it, you get feedback. I'm really pleased with the way that this is working out, and long term, this is going to serve our students really well.
Fantastic.
So go to latinperdiem.com, check out the Intro Latin course, Hans Orberg, check out the Intro Greek course, Moss Method. If you're not really, interested in a long-term commitment, take one of the master classes. I have them on Cicero, Erasmus, Calvin, Beza. This is a very easy way to get your feet wet in the study of, if you're more of an advanced student, I guess to continue getting your feet wet in the study of Latin. So please check that out.
Fantastic. Excellent. And Dave, we also have people to thank.
Yes.
As always, there's our wonderful engineer, Mishka.
Who had a birthday on Thursday.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mishka.
Absolutely.
And she does such a good job of making this sound great and turning it around so quickly. So always a big thanks to her.
She's got high-level skills, let me tell you.
Yep. And then Ken Tamplin and Scott Van Zen, they're the guys playing that screaming guitar that you hear throughout the episode.
The bumper music around the ads with the bass, and so generous, so grateful that they have shared that music with us. Jeff, we haven't dropped the code word.
No, we haven't. That code word is quatuor, which is the Latin word for the number 4. And Dave, how do we spell quatuor?
We spell it, let's see, R-O-U-T...
What are you doing there?
T-A-U-Q.
Oh, you're spelling it backwards.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Q-U-A-T-T-O-R. TUOR.
There we go.
Anybody sends it in backwards, you're not going to win.
No.
In fact, you're going to have to buy a ratio 4 if you send it in backward. That would be the opposite.
Yeah, so send that in anticipation of the drawing on March 26th.
Yes, dave@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V. If you'd like to get in touch with Jeff.
Yes.
If you'd like to congratulate him on an excellent episode that he set up for us today, send your emails to jeff@adnauseam.com.
Yep, and if you want to get in touch with Dave, we'd love to have, we need a shout out.
We haven't had a shout out in quite a while.
Right, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear. You can write to dave@adnauseam.com. Again, don't forget that V.
You can pick up a t-shirt at adnauseam.com right now. I am wearing the Quai Nocent Docent. And what's the image?
It's Heracles wrestling the Nemean lion.
Oh, that's incredible.
It's great, yeah.
So check that out. And what's on tap for next week?
I believe we're interviewing somebody, right?
I hope so. We haven't quite nailed it down, but we're going to get this this very famous scholar who just won an award, Mr. Peter Sarris.
Yes.
He just won an award, and he's going to talk to us about his fabulous book on Justinian, the late Roman emperor.
Fantastic. And I believe that wraps it up.
That does. It ties it all up with a nice little bow.
And I think that you have our gustatory parting shot, yes?
I do. And this is from one Robert Louis Stevenson, famous author of Treasure Island.
Yeah.
And I think he is competing for the most prolific author in English.
Is that right?
Yes, he wrote just a massive amount of things. Wow. I've only read Treasure Island, maybe a couple others, but yeah, the guy's work is...
He could crank it out.
He could really crank it out. I think I got to visit the bar in Edinburgh where he used to frequent and do some of his writing.
Is that right?
Yeah, just very cool. Much like J.K. Rowling.
That's right.
Anyway, Robert Louis Stevenson gives us this gustatory parting shot, and he says, wine is bottled poetry.
Fantastic. Love it.
You're not a wine guy?
I like a glass of wine every once in a while, but I love that phrase.
Yeah, wine is bottled poetry. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.